So, what are you involved in on campus? It's the equivalent of what do you do for college students, an unspoken form of social capital frequently added to the standard name, major, class year introduction. Within the bubble of higher education, extracurriculars are often as defining of a characteristic as one's major. They tell people who you are, what you are interested in, and how you spend your time. Clubs, organizations, and other forms of involvement and engagement also provide valuable experiences that enrich the overall student experience. Falling under the umbrella of student affairs, engagement and involvement opportunities both influence and are influenced by the various other parts of one's life, ranging from upbringing to career goals to mental health and so much more. Through examining what motivates students to participate in extracurriculars, we can get a more thoughtful and detailed picture of the current state of student affairs in higher ed. My name is Rachel Cutsumpas, and I graduated from the Park School of Communications at Ithaca College in May of 2020. For my first day at the college, I was immersed in a culture of student involvement and engagement, an area that became a pivotal passion point for me. Between joining different organizations, working in the Office of Student Engagement, planning events, and leading workshops for other clubs, student involvement truly defined my experience at Ithaca College. All of this eventually led to an independent research study during the spring semester of my senior year, focusing on student engagement participation and gender differences in motivation for getting involved on campus. A few months after finishing this research study and graduating from IC, I took some time to really reflect on the research and talk to participants and other members of the Ithaca College community in a series of informal conversations. And this video highlights those conversations and aims to illustrate the continually evolving field of student engagement in higher education. Regardless of how one defines or participates in involvement and engagement opportunities, the pattern was clear across the board. Extracurricular involvement is essential. It matters for belonging, it matters for student retention and connection to the institution, and it matters for building valuable life skills.
Making new friends, learning new life skills.
Student engagement is like the second pillar of the college experience. That's like what builds your communities and friend groups on campus.
Honestly, keeping your sanity, because if you just do schoolwork, you're gonna go crazy and you need people to talk to.
In crafting this whole research project, I knew from the beginning that I wanted to examine why students do or do not choose to get involved in different engagement opportunities when they're in college. And it was really through working as a student leadership consultant in the Office of Student Engagement and a lot of my own experience in student organizations that I noticed that there was a much greater number, noticeably different in the number of women than men that were getting involved and taking on leadership roles in clubs and other programming. But I never could really determine a concrete reason why this was happening. I didn't know if it was just the things that I happened to be involved in or if it truly was this campus-wide pattern. This research study was my attempt to answer three main questions. Does gender have an impact in this area, or are some people just predisposed to involvement and engagement more than others? Are women actually more involved in extracurriculars, or is that just a perception? And do men and women have different reasoning for getting involved in college? The research was designed as an exploratory study using both primary and secondary research methods. There were over 300 total research impressions from the Ithaca College community, including current students, recent alumni, faculty, and staff members. The primary research included an online survey, in-depth interviews, and focus group sessions. Additional data was provided by the Office of Analytics and Institutional Research with permission from the Office of Student Engagement and the college's Institutional Review Board. While the study was conducted on a fairly small sample, efforts were made to collect data from a diverse population of students. It is important to note that this is not perfect data and relies on self-report methods, but the results were able to provide meaningful information about involvement motivation. The scope of the study focused primarily on cisgender men and women. Non-binary and transgender perspectives were collected and incorporated into the analysis of the survey data. However, due to the small sample sizes of these populations, there was not enough statistically significant data to incorporate these perspectives into all areas of the study. The study and analysis of this data were conducted with the understanding that gender identity is only one of many complex influences on one's behavior. The data collected revealed a few key insights on the involvement gender gap. Women at Ithaca College are more involved than men, and their involvement increases over time. Women face added pressure and feel like they have to do more to compete with their male counterparts. Women look for career advancement opportunities in extracurriculars, while men are more socially motivated. Having had time to distribute the results of the study, I asked participants if any of these insights surprised them based on their experience at the college.
I was so excited that you wrote about this topic, truly, because I think that this is something that I've been observing anecdotally for a long time.
I mean, you helped me kind of develop the topic as well, but when I was just initially looking at it, I was like, will I even find anything significant? Is this just because all the things I've literally been involved in since high school have always just stereotypically been female skewed. But then in actually collecting the data, it was interesting to see how much it was a factor, I guess.
Definitely.
It made me super reflective because every single e-board I was a part of was all female. And I don't think I really even thought about it until you started the study.
I felt like it was something that kept coming up in my life, just kept happening where male students were talking over me in places they shouldn't have been, and it was really just becoming a constant theme also after the study came out and he finished everything, and I just kept referencing it with my friends when I was talking about it because I was I have proof that it happens now. I don't know, I felt like it was very relatable and it made me feel less crazy.
I don't believe I was surprised because they were experiences I've encountered while at school, and to see that others had encountered them as well, it gave me a sense of comfort, I guess, or unity that I didn't know, a silent unity.
You always kind of get the feel socially and when you're in extracurricular activities that it's just more female weighted and that females have a greater pressure, I feel to be involved in things. They were pretty much what I expected them to be, and based on who showed up to focus groups and who participated overall.
When I was trying to get participants, it kind of reinforced a lot of the things in the study. Nicole and I also discussed how the gender dynamics of extracurricular participation were further illustrated through who participated in research tactics used in the study. Women students accounted for the majority of research participants. In addition, the men that participated were all involved or highly involved in extracurricular activities and were already personally invested in engagement.
I think that that's really telling about involvement overall, right? Because you reached out to a pretty wide swath of students, and there are just some people who just didn't even bother. They were whatever. And I think that that reflects what their involvement is too.
Yeah, definitely. And in kind of crafting the report of okay, I have to obviously it's not perfect data, it's a small sample, there's obviously flaws, but I think that itself is its own data point too, because it's there was no difference in how I recruited people,
right?
But there's so much fewer male identifying participants.
Right.
Across various involvement types, there are more women than men participating in student engagement activities at Ithaca College. While there is currently a higher percentage of women undergraduate students than men, this disparity in participation is not proportionate to the enrollment breakdown of the college. The student population consists of 56.4% women and 41.7% men, while 94.7% of women survey respondents reported being a member of at least one student organization, compared to 76.7% of men respondents. Not only are college women more likely to be involved, but they are spending more time on these commitments, attending more campus events, and are more often the ones taking on leadership roles and officer positions. I asked the video participants to think about why these patterns of involvement are happening among women students.
That is literally the definition of my entire engagement experience at Ithaca. It was all girls all the time. And you'd have one random boy, or if, like, for certain groups I was in where like we were trying to get a more diverse population, it was always such a struggle to get boys.
I do believe it was plainly obvious gender discrepancies, whether it be within a club or at an event on campus.
Oh, I definitely noticed that. I mean, okay, we were both in stat together. We noticed, my gosh, 90% of our base or of our organization was female skew. Was female, and we had to pull part of the organization. I don't know why, but when I was coming on board my first year, they just wanted to have guys there.
Specifically why women are more involved, I think that comes back from the oppression that we have faced as a gender as a whole. We feel this pressure, like, to do everything and to do it well and to be perfect at it.
Justina describes a key theory examined in this study of effortless perfection. As described by Duke University and further examined by Carolina Peterson, college women feel an intense pressure to be perfect and possess the ability to not just do it all, but do it all with ease. They feel like they not only have to be perfect, but they have to be effortlessly perfect, maintaining good grades, an active social life, and high levels of involvement. This leaves little room for any struggle, or at least any visible struggle, in the equation. Of course, college men also feel similar pressures, but these kinds of expectations for perfection are not felt or experienced in the same way.
We just feel the need that we always need to be doing something. Most of my friends who are female identifying, like, they enjoy being busy, they like getting things done, and they're not always in it for the social aspect, and they're willing to do things that they don't necessarily enjoy if they think that it will, like, help further their career or do things like that.
I think women in college are looking for those extracurricular activities to set themselves apart more and get that interview, while the male student, in society, they already feel like they don't need to go above and beyond, as they already feel like, again, they're more confident in themselves. They feel like they don't need to prepare as much.
If we can, like, have this strong background, even though we shouldn't need all of these examples and all of these reasons why we fit this role and this job that we are going to apply for later on, we kind of need that to validate, like, for employers to validate us.
When it comes to extracurricular involvement, most students are initially looking to get similar things out of their experience: meeting new people, professional development, a sense of community, a creative outlet, and much more.
So rewarding just to see people who have similar interests as you, and just like have that, like, the zeal behind themselves and just so much drive. And it's so, like, invigorating, and it makes me want to do more.
Ultimately, for me, I derive a lot of my energy from talking, from leading, from being involved in things, from putting on great events, from connecting students from all different places and walks of life. And so that's something that's exciting and why I choose to be involved.
I think I kind of got involved because I was scared that I wasn't going to be successful if I didn't get involved. Like, I feel like right off the bat, when you get to school, they're like, you should join this and you should do this. Because, like, that's how it gets you an internship or a job.
Not only are women at Ithaca College more involved than their male counterparts, they are involved at a deeper level. This is seen most clearly through data from IC Engage on student organization officer positions. In addition to career advancement opportunities, developing leadership skills are often a driving motivation for women students to get involved and stay involved in extracurricular activities.
That social aspect, I think, was the original driving force for joining extracurriculars. And then once I found the groups I was really a part of and really enjoyed, I wanted to see and grow my leadership skills. So it sort of transitioned into growing those skills and seeing what I could do, not only for myself, for the group I was part of, but how that could impact the campus community or even the greater Ithaca community.
As I got involved in something and I really cared about it, then I wanted to also like try to take ownership and like help it and move along. And I think kind of that was just a new challenge every time.
While motivations for initially getting involved among men and women are similar, a key difference was revealed through the research. Most women saw career advancement and professional growth as their primary motivation for extracurricular involvement, whereas men were primarily motivated by social factors and saw professional growth as an added bonus rather than a compelling reason to get involved.
So for me, personally, getting involved in extracurriculars was mostly about trying to like advance in my career and prepare myself for finding a job outside of college.
I wanted to look good right off the bat early on so that I can eventually get a good career. So I was very career motivated and still felt the need to, be involved in a lot of different things so that I could look good and have, when it came to an interview, have all of these vast experiences to discuss and talk about and say, hey, I had this experience, I got these skills, this is what's going to make me a great candidate.
Similar to the expectations for that myth of effortless perfection, women participants reported feeling added pressures to compete with their male counterparts. And this level of stress and pressure felt by women students to continually prove themselves impacts their level of extracurricular involvement much more so than it does for men. This is supported by national data conducted by the American College Health Association. At colleges and universities across the U.S., women students reported feelings of stress and anxiety 14 to 18 percentage points higher than men students. Even if they are subtle influences, all of these pressures factor into a feeling among women students that they need to do more, work harder, and prove themselves on a regular basis.
I see that so much with students who are loading things on their plate.
The college students that I knew, I felt like the men were generally much more aloof in how they treated their responsibilities and their college experience. And like I tried to not fill up my time schedule either because I valued my free time to be spontaneous. Like I was only able to do that because I didn't feel the pressure to be doing more academically or professionally.
I think the people who are worried about doing so much and being so engaged are already still like light years above the average person. So I feel like it's just competing against yourself or like your few peers. I definitely felt like that in college. And then looking back, I realized that was probably a lot of extra stress I did not have to put on myself.
One of the outcomes of this pressure on college women to compete and excel is a simultaneous feeling of doing too much while feeling like they are never doing enough.
I always felt like I was doing so much, but at the same time, I was like, I'm missing out on the social aspect, which is so interesting because it's like I would go to these clubs for the social aspect, and I feel like I was actually missing time going to the library with my friends or going to the dining hall or doing whatever because I was more focused on going to 3 club meetings a day.
I resonate with that feeling of you think you're doing everything, but then you're like, am I doing everything? And just that sense of wanting to constantly be doing something.
One of the most interesting research findings that came out of this study was the notion of one's identity and overall reputation as a student being really closely linked to involvement and engagement in extracurriculars. Students really closely associate themselves with the various groups they're involved in, especially at a school with a high involvement culture like IC. Yet the women students that I interviewed, they reported a much greater emphasis on this link between involvement and their overall image on campus. There was a strong feeling of responsibility and obligation to these commitments, and a sense they couldn't not be highly involved or it would reflect poorly on them. Women participants frequently noted having trouble turning down opportunities or taking a step back to focus on academics or other groups, saying they would rather sacrifice their personal time and well-being in order to maintain this image.
It almost becomes like a thing, like you feel like you need to be busy because if you're not, people think less of you.
It's almost like, oh, I'm not involved in a lot of things. What am I seen as? I get that you don't you want that approval. At least for me, I want that approval, right, from people compared to maybe my personal health that day, probably pretty low, but at least I showed up and kept kind of that image I have for professors, right?
I came back to this point and I was like, oh, that is like definitely something I have done.
Me too.
And it's like you don't, in the moment you're like, oh, it's fine, like I'll just stay up like 2 hours later. But it's like
oh, I don't have to eat dinner tonight.
Yeah, it's like I'll eat dinner at like 10 p.m. instead of like we're like taking a break and like getting this assignment done like earlier because I have to go to this meeting.
Right.
And it's like, it's weird because in the moment you're like, well, this is good. Like it's building like grit and like work ethic and like it's a good experience. But then when you look at it from like an outside view, it's like, that's not good. It's like, why are you doing that? And it's not that like there's plenty of like men on campus who are highly involved as well and like are doing just as much and like probably do this as well. Right. But in like a lot of the interviews with students and staff members pointed out as well, it's like I don't think there's as much of a sense of like personal guilt among men students in the same way, at least from like the research and like my own observations. It's like they at times will put themselves first, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's just interesting to see like that difference there. When starting this research in January of 2020, I knew that it would evolve and shift throughout the semester as I began collecting data. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted so many elements of higher education, especially student affairs. While I wasn't able to incorporate this vast influence on the current state of student engagement in the report, I knew it was important to include in this video project.
One of the things that I have observed this summer and going in as we're starting the fall semester is how desperately returning and new students want to connect to each other.
I think part of the virtual world is that you're able to remove yourself, right? And people can't see you on campus. How many students across the board who are female identifying are like going to let's say, oh, I don't have to do this, right? Like push it to the side. I'm going to focus on my online classes, or I took a leave of absence and focus on other things.
In a post-COVID world, I can see it being a little bit stronger because I think right now we're seeing just how competitive the job market can be in low moments like this, where the economy is not doing too great, where there's a lot of uncertainty. Is the next generation already seeing this and realizing, crap, I need to do more in a competitive job market? Could we see more burnout from this? Possibly.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's like there's definitely going to be those students that are going to want to do more so much because they've been missing it. And then it's just going to kind of continue some of those patterns that we've seen among students of just like overworking themselves, being over involved.
It's hard to like shift that narrative and think about belonging when you're just like shifting from a Zoom room in a classroom to a Zoom room in like a comedy event hosted by Student Activities Board, right? Like there's no shift there.
Yeah, I feel like if you already know people, it's easy to find some sort of like connection and like way to keep in touch online.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you're trying to meet new people in like, you're not gonna connect with people in a Zoom class. I couldn't even imagine starting school. I feel, and I've talked about this with a couple other people I've done these like conversations with, that like, are those students going to, even when they are able to come back to campus full time and what we call normal for college, like, are they really going to have that kind of long-term connection with the college? Which like, obviously you want that from a just like belonging, like personal standpoint, but then also from like a very rational institutional standpoint, like those are, if you're not connected to the school, you're not like, maybe you're not going to stay 4 years, maybe you're not going to graduate, maybe you're not going to want to come back and volunteer or donate money or all the various ways you can like be connected to the college after leaving your educational time. So it's like definitely an issue, but it's also hard to imagine how you can like authentically connect with someone. In addition to examining the impact of COVID-19 on involvement and engagement, I asked participants what changes will, should, and need to happen in student affairs moving forward.
I think we're seeing firsthand the actual implications of that. I'm really nervous about the future of student affairs. Like, I mean, student affairs has always been like, they're seen as the other side of the house. So there's the academic side and then there's student affairs, and they're called the two sides of the house. And I think that student affairs professionals understand that you need both to make a college run. The faculty or the academic side of the house does not feel that way. And that's a generalized statement, of course. I have worked with some incredible faculty who understand and value the work that we do, but that is not a majority opinion. While I understand that academics is such a huge component of higher education. I mean, look at your study. Look at it. Yeah. Look at the entire premise of the study, other than like some of the findings about the breakdowns. I think ultimately, like, you can take away that extracurricular activities and engagement outside of the classroom is crucial to the academic experience.
I definitely think, at least at Ithaca, from like what I've experienced working like within the Office of Student Engagement, I think that our outreach can sometimes be so limited to like, we have these people who come in for Jumpstart, they're already involved, like let's keep them involved. And the people who show up to the work fair, but it kind of has to be balanced, because it's like you're putting out all these efforts to like bring people to you, but sometimes you just have to go where the people are. And like I feel like a lot of times like our varsity athletes and like club athletes are so untapped to like what we're doing. I feel like so many of the male population who are not involved and don't want to be in like organization leadership roles are the people that we're not like talking to. So it's almost like it's on the school to do more outreach as much as it is the people to like be engaged with that outreach. There kind of needs to be like a common ground that needs to be established, and not just be like, oh, these people don't participate. Well, that sucks. Like they should do that next time. It's like, okay, but why aren't they participating? Like, are we not marketing to where they're looking? When you think about like, I don't know, my marketing brain is just like, well, if you think about like enrollment to like retention.
Yeah.
And I think it was like one of the first year students that I interviewed, she was like, oh, I was actually going to transfer after a year, but like I'm so involved that like I couldn't imagine like going anywhere else, because like I feel like this is like where I'm meant to be because of all the things. So it's like, yes, it matters for like the student level, but at an institutional level, like there's value in engagement beyond just like we have it to like show on admissions tours.
So many of the students that I work with are not leaving the college because they are involved, right? And so they feel those connections, and they've got that loyalty to, it may not be to Ithaca College, it might be to that group that they are a part of. And so I think that you're right, this has true financial implications, which that could be an influence for people who don't understand, who think you're just doing that for fun. Right? Or you're just doing it for your resume, right?
Student affairs is often called student life because it touches so many elements of a student's experience in college. From professional development to mental health, hobbies and interests, social time, identity, and so on. Involvement and engagement will always be an important and meaningful part of a student's educational experience. But higher education would also benefit from a reframing of engagement. I think that there needs to be a harder sell of engagement in some ways. There needs to be clearer communication of the value and benefits of involvement to groups on campus outside of the students who are already those over-involved, hyper-involved students. And while that's true, at the same time, there also needs to be more emphasis on balance and creating an environment where students, particularly women students in this case, don't feel pressure to be involved and extending themselves beyond what they can realistically take on. Ithaca College is not alone in this problem, nor did they create it. And some of these negative outcomes, whether they be stress, overworking, or dropping those just for fun activities, don't take away from the positive experiences that come from extracurricular involvement. This project only scratched the surface of the wealth of potential research in this area. It is my hope that colleges and universities will continue to evolve their student affairs programming to adapt to these issues and changes.